Hello, conference attendees. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining us today for Functional Food Center's 29th International Conference. We have attendees and speakers from all around the world, and I am glad that we can gather over Zoom to learn about how functional foods and bioactive compounds can be used to reduce the risk of chronic as well as viral diseases such as COVID-19. I would like to thank our organizing committee first for helping us to make the event possible. I would like also to thank all our amazing presenters for their contributions to the conference and their research. We come up with 10 scientific sessions for this conference, and also we have two extraordinary keynote speakers. One from academia, Harvard Medical School, Dr. Ajay, and another one from the government, US government from Food and Drug Administration, Tom Sidebottom, who have a 30 plus years experience in FDA. Without further delay, I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Dr. Amarenda Ajay. Dr. Ajay is an instructor of medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at Harvard Medical School. He also serves as an editorial board member for our open access peer-reviewed journal, Functional Foods in Health and Disease. And Dr. Ajay also is an active member of Academic Society for Functional Food and Bioactive Compounds. His research focuses on acute and chronic kidney diseases, and today he will be sharing with us his finding on COVID-19 and acute chronic kidney injury and functional foods.
Introduction, some more data about what we did in the mice. So this compound was basically used in the mouse because this compound is safe. And as you can see here in the figure B, so these are the control, and these are on the right side are the TW37 treated compounds. I would like to focus you on F480 staining. So you see more F480 in red here. That is a marker of uh, inflammatory cells, macrophages, and these macrophages were reduced after TW37. And we did it after fatty acid uptake also. And you can see that after fatty acid treatment and treated with TW37, we see a decrease in macrophages infiltration, saying you that there's less inflammation, and that this is the quantization of the same, saying you that if you have free fatty acid and TW37 treatment decreases the uptake of decreases the macrophage cells infiltration in the kidney. Again, we looked at the fibrosis, and these are basically again focus on red staining, which is smooth muscle actin, which is a marker for myofibroblast accumulation in the kidney or other tissues as well. So in the controls, we see a lot of myofibroblast. After TW37, we barely see anything. In terms of free fatty acid, we see more accumulation of myofibroblast in the control mice, but
is that the outbreak itself, together with the measures that were instituted to control it, both contributed to very high degrees of anxiety. We know from the literature that elevated intake of added sugars, saturated fats, but not necessarily calories per se, are all positively associated with increased anxiety. And anxiety is also associated with obesity and other risk to health behaviors. We did know from the pandemic, it's very early on, in fact, that there were a lot of people who had died from the disease who also had comorbidities associated with obesity, if not obesity itself, then certainly diabetes type 2, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, lung disease, and so on. On the other hand, we think that good nutrition can promote good health, and that might reduce anxiety. So I want to talk a minute about the Mediterranean diet. I'm sure most of you know the Mediterranean diet is characterized by frequent intake of olive oil, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, fish, and nuts, and less intake of red meat and sugars and processed foods. And we know from many, many studies that the Mediterranean diet is associated with reduction in all-cause and cause-specific mortalities, specifically mortality due to things like degenerative diseases like cardiovascular disease and so on. And we also see a reduced risk of those comorbidities themselves. In other words, people who are lifelong followers of the Mediterranean diet style are enjoying lower rates of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and so on. So because the Mediterranean diet can be conceived of as a very healthy way to eat, we looked at it as a way to measure quality of diet. And you can give a score for the Mediterranean diet. And what this means is that the
Fortunately, we found a herb. This herb is the name is Kilinga. Kilinga. I look at this picture. Here, this is the seed ball, and here is the virus. Very similar, very similar. And look at this. This is a square picture. And I found in the books and the Chinese traditional books, I found maybe it could be used as for this disease. And this herb also for the food for the cattle, sheep, and fish in Central South China. So I also found and correlates effective molecular isolate from this herb and can use as a food.
Were seen in immunosuppressed mice that have been fed a noni fruit extract or diacetyl asparylositic acid. It's abbreviated DAA for short, because that other word is a long word. But DAA is an iridoid, and it's the major phytochemical constituent of noni fruit, and in fact has been shown to be responsible, at least in major part, for several biological activities of noni fruit juice, including DNA protective action and antioxidant activities. And those have been observed in animals and in human trials as well. In this particular study with immune suppressed mice, IL-2 levels and natural killer cell activities were improved with increasing doses of noni fruit extract or DAA alone.
Present and where we gain more and more knowledge through ongoing research. So we know, and this is even in the pandemic, very important, that we have an inhibition of the storage of toxins in the body, that we can enhance the efflux of aggregated toxic material, and it helps the liver to get rid of some components which are stored therein. And we have also, and that is oftentimes a complaint, an antispasmodial effect of the plant. We have also the possibility to enhance the blood circulation. I think that is also a very important effect for the time being. And if we take that all together, and if we look at it, we have an antimicrobial activity, we have an antioxidant activity. It can be anti-diabetic. It is not so important for this purpose. And it is anti-inflammatory, anticonvulsant, analgesic, and we know also about cytotoxic activities. So we can actively address cancer. Just coming slightly to the antibacterial properties of Juniperus communis, there are from very reliable authors very good research articles. The first, which I like to mention, is that we can look into urinary tract infections, and they're fighting Staph aureus, E. coli, and many others. And we know that this is all dose dependent and obviously a matter of the efflux from the kidneys. But the plant has an activity to enhance the flux from water out of the kidneys, giving more volume to the urinary tract. So it has a two-sided effect, so to say. We know also from another author that the fractions of the oils have, especially also for E. coli, but also for yeast and fungi activity. And it could be identified that this was, as I said initially, the alpha-pinene and the saponin, which are taking care of fighting the bacteria.
Chromatin. This is mediated by histone modification and DNA methylation. And as I said before, we can address both mechanisms. And we know that there are some of these compounds, these ingredients, known to potentially interact with chromatin. But of course, chromatin changes are the glory of epigenetics, and we certainly need to work in this area much more. We know much better the methylation mechanisms. The epigenetic methylation is in fact the best marker for biological aging. If you analyze cytosine methylation here in hundreds of genes, mostly promoter regions, not all, you can first of all detect the chronological age. It's even used for forensic analysis. And if you do it again and again, you can track the effects of lifestyle, of nutrition, of food ingredients, and you can have a look and see if the aging goes slowly, a healthy aging, or if it's an accelerated aging seen by these methylation markers. And I think this clock will be a central mechanism to analyze effectivity of additives in the near future. Of course, aging also increases debris in our tissues. This needs autophagy. Autophagy is closely regulated precisely epigenetically, and we know a number of functional foods which interfere with this epigenetic regulation of autophagy. Spermidine has got some interest in the last years, but there is a bunch of other functional foods, e.g. quercetin, curcumin, resveratrols, which are known here. Debris and autophagy is especially important in the one effect of life, and this is neuroinflammation and cognitive decline, especially in Alzheimer's diseases, where a lot of debris comes. And we have just analyzed here the effect of different nutraceuticals in this neuroinflammation with a focus on phagocytosis.
the systemic immune system response. And one of the ways that it does that, there's lots of signaling that's happening here, but one of that you see here is that the microbiome is going to produce these short chain fatty acids, and those have a variety of signaling effects throughout the immune system, so at the level of macrophages and neutrophils and natural killer cells, and the list goes on and on and on. And so one of the great ways to improve short chain fatty acid production and actually be able to modulate it and manipulate it so that the immune system is stronger is by feeding different kinds of fibers. We can talk about whether it's specific prebiotic fibers or other kinds of fibers, or phytonutrients that have prebiotic-like effects. I'll talk today about alpha glucans that we can get from mushrooms, and beta glucans that we can get from yeast, and polyphenols that we can get from a variety of different plant extracts, fruit and vegetable extracts. And so this is sort of a simplistic way of looking at it. But if you can have a rich, diverse, balanced microbiome, you have a normal immune system effect. You have a dynamic immune system that can be quiet when it needs to be quiet, and can be active when it needs to be active, and then can turn on and shut off in a dynamic fashion so that you don't get infected, or you're less likely to get infected because you don't have suppression, and you're less likely to get allergies and food intolerances in the autoimmune side because you're less likely to be chronically activated. But that all falls away when you have a low diversity or an unbalanced or some sort of a dysbiosis at the level of your immune system, because that can lead to not just inflammatory problems, but it can lead to frank immune system dysfunction. And that's certainly not what we want from a general health perspective, but it's also certainly not what we want from a mental wellness perspective either. Sometimes this is referred to as leaky gut. I don't always like that terminology, because there's an aspect of certain categories of health professionals that think leaky gut doesn't exist because there aren't very good diagnostics and treatments and things like that. But it absolutely exists. We can measure it, we can document it, we can treat it. We can take somebody, so here on this graphic, you're seeing going from a healthy gut to a leaky gut, and there's all sorts of factors that can lead to that, that you can see here: stress and non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and antibiotics, etc. But we can also take this leaky gut, or the terminology I prefer is gut permeability, and we can take it back towards good gut integrity using some of the things that I said before: the right fibers, the right prebiotics, the right polyphenols. Luckily, there's a very long list of natural supplements and functional foods that we can use to move ourselves back the other way. And that's important because of this very, very close linkage between not just what the microbiome is doing and what the immune system is doing, but the fact that your immune system ages just like the rest of the body ages, and that can lead to a variety of different inflammatory problems. It can lead to problems with cancer surveillance. So a suppressed immune system is going to increase the risk for certain kinds of cancer. So if we can keep the immune system strong directly and keep the immune system dynamically active indirectly through the level of the microbiome, that's going to be good for every level of what we consider to be human health and human performance. And so
whereas in gastrointestinal patients, we see further reduction in MUAC and further reduction in hemoglobin also. And these were the category of patients which required blood transfusion prior to surgery. If you have a look at the hemoglobin count, which is the normal requirement is 13.5, we can see the gastrointestinal patient was far lower than the normal requirement. And further, the albumin count was also low. After supplementation with amylose-rich supplement, which was of brown rice, we see that in orthopedic patients, there was a sudden drastic increase in the energy intake, which was up to 1500 kilocalorie. And whereas the fluid intake was also shooted up to 1200 ml. However, in the control group, there was minor reduction in the kilocalories and also in the fluid intake. The maximum beneficial effect was seen in orthopedic patients due to old age, which was undergoing surgery. And in gastrointestinal patient, the major lookout was to increase their calorie and boost their immunity so that there was no further complication in their stay. So as we see, there was increase in calorie by 63% in the intervention group compared to the control group, which was very significant. And also there was good amount of liquid intake, which was about 34% higher in the intervention group compared to the control group. This was all due to the high amount of antioxidants and phytochemicals which were present naturally in the brown rice. And further, it showed better results.
And certainly if you live in the US and you're familiar with the romaine lettuce outbreak, every company that puts out romaine lettuce is suspect, even though there was only one type of romaine from one place that was involved in this. So as we go through, we learn Deepwater Horizons was really just an illustration for me of a different event that comes through. Impacts went on much longer than the anthrax and the letter issue. But what you see is that there was about a year to a year and a half where fishing was closed. It reopened with a lot of oversight. And then everybody thinks, great, we're done. But here we are in 2021, and the health and the environmental impacts from that event are still being felt. Where we will be with COVID and how long that will be was yet to be determined. But certainly we're already seeing pointers that COVID is impacting us much longer term. While FDA was responding and doing, they put together this document for pandemic recovery and preparedness. Governments are really good with coming up with acronyms for plans and documents. I have more brain space now that I've left the FDA because I don't have as much memory tied up remembering all the different acronyms and terminology. But this is really important because FDA was committed to public health emergency activities, making sure that their own staff were healthy, and also that their facilities and locations in the communities that they support across a broad community base were being taken care of. And this plan goes into a lot of detail. I'm not going to cover that here. You can certainly read if you're interested. So we talked about the activities that impacted FDA. I won't spend any more time there. So how do we return to normal conditions? How do we get to where we need to be? And I would like to really just pause here for a second and have you think about where you are in this journey. Where are you in the food thing? Are you a manufacturer? Are you an agricultural grower? Are you a doctor or a nutritionist? Where are you in this? And how do you look to see the future being, and what things can you do now while we're in this area of uncertainty, looking for a post-COVID window, if that should come. And again, the different lenses here are consumer, industry, the service providers. Again, this is about an integrated system. Everything needs to be integrated and connected. So what are you really thinking about for your systems, right? There are different activities that are going on. These look similar to what I said were on their mind before COVID, but for sure in 2021, FDA is going to be bringing on more of the final rule for traceability. That comment period ended at the beginning of 2021. So later in the year, FDA will be putting out that traceability. Third-party lab accreditation was also comment ended in 2020. That is coming. It's not been released yet, but that's going to have impact. And then we look at AI, we look at analytics, data mining, Internet of Things, all of this. What are the right systems and how are you integrating your systems, and how are you taking opportunity of this pause with FDA and other regulators maybe not being in your facility or with you as frequently so that you can start engaging them when you come out after all of this?
So after receiving the product, we studied some of the biochemical assays and GCMS to check what is the active compounds. Already it is a pure compound, but still we tried to check with the different biochemical assays to or phytochemical assays to see what is inside that compound. It is present with the alkaloids and present with the flavonoid. It is absence of tannins, terpenoids, steroids, saponins that are absent, and flavonoids and alkaloids are present inside the compound. This is the GCMS spectra. GCMS spectra showing that that is compound of the polyunsaturated fatty acid and monounsaturated fatty acid, tocopherol, small peptides, and stigmatins. So then we check if it is a mutagenic or genotoxic. So we did a TOMAT assay and we found there is a no TOMAT tail form. This is because this is a DNA. This slide was purchased from the Trivigen USA, and we found it's a control and it is a treated, and we found with a rhodiola treated. So there is a no TOMAT tail form in both the cases. So this is a control cells and it is a treated cell. So there is a no TOMAT tail formation. So that don't have any genotoxic effect. Then we shift to our focus to the stem cells, and we want to see, because stem cells one of the hot topic or hot discussion in or one of the main topic of research in the aging research. So we are using stem cell powder, different creams, different medicines produced from the stem cells. So we also studied on if there's any effect on increase the vitality of the stem cells, or it can change the stem cells effect. So stem cells generally are self-renew or differentiate. They can differentiate. They are totipotent stem cells, that is for the embryonic stem cells that we receive from the blastocyst, then pluripotent stem cells like embryonic stem cell, then multipotent. We are using the multipotent stem cell that is known as the mesenchymal stem cells.
When we went checking the telomere length measurements, although in the abstract we wrote that we had a significant increase of telomere length, actually, we are recounting, and accumulating new data. So at the moment, I must say, unlike the abstract, the telomere length between FPP given supplemented group and the antioxidant supplemented group, the telomere length has quite a big overlap. So at the moment, I cannot say that fermented papaya preparation did elongate the telomere at the moment, but we are still continuing accumulating data. So maybe what seems to be a trend may be significant, or on the contrary, may lose definitely significance. What was definitely significant is when we test the gene expression of SOD, GPX, sirtuin, sirtuin-2, 6, catalase, and as you can see that only the redox genes, not the sirtuin, unlike what Professor Patrick showed with the phytomarine compound on sirtuin, beautiful data, those one. But we didn't do anything either with FPP or antioxidant on sirtuins in these healthy people, but we did definitely increase overexpressed in interesting genes like SOD, GPX1, and catalase, not so with antioxidant. And even more interesting for our study, for the key point of our study, antioxidants were totally ineffective in modifying the gene expression of the TERT, RAP53, two key telomere genes, nor on HOGG1, important gene for DNA repair, but FPP did so. We were not that surprised to see this result on HOGG1. We had already in the past in elderly people, but certainly this is the first clinical study showing that the functional food can overexpress key genes for telomere maintenance.
investigate interactions between biopolymers and the encapsulants, and we done that by Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, and we find out that mainly interactions are going through electrostatic interactions and hydrogen bonding. Also, we investigate in vitro release of active compounds, both microspheres and also microcapsules. And we find out that a higher concentration of the cations improves the release. But with the addition of the ketone layer, we could slow down the releasing of bioactive components. In both cases, the releasing of bioactive components from the formulations are going through this process of diffusions, but they have a different types of transport kinetics. Also, we made investigation of morphology of these formulations. So we used different types of microscopy. So we used the scanning electron microscopy, confocal laser scanning microscopy, and also optical microscopy and atomic force microscopy. So as you could see, we could measure the size of the pores on these microparticles, and through these pores, you could see that bioactive components will go out. Also, you could see here this layer of ketone as a second layer, and also inside you could see the Trichoderma viride spores. You could see that Trichoderma viride spores, they survived the process of encapsulation. And also what is very, very interesting, they start to grow, as you could see here on this microparticle microphotograph. And as I said, this is a very thin layer of ketone layer, which is very important because this layer is tuning the releasing of bioactive components from these formulations.
And maintaining our optimal health. Now, in conjunction with vitamin C and other selected micronutrients and electrolytes, perform versatile physiological function and contribute to the human health. What are those? Proper hydration in cellular compartments, pH balance and fluid homeostasis, energy homeostasis, storage and dissipation, facilitate cellular nutrient utilization, cardiac rhythm, cardiac and neuronal functions, muscle function, cellular functioning, elimination of cellular debris, cofactors for the crucial enzymes in DNA and protein synthesis. Now, normal electrolyte elimination takes place through urine, feces, skin, sweat, and during menstruation. So here, this chart shows that different electrolytes and what are their required plasma level of the concentration. So I'm not going to read it out. If you need a copy, you can get it. Now, electrolyte and the water concentration. As we know, hydration is very important for our body to maintain body's the biological fluid viscosity and pH level within a narrow physiological range. Maintenance of the electrolyte and fluid balance. And now, vomiting, excessive sweating, diarrhea, and certain medication, hepatic and nephrotic disorders can upset electrolyte and fluid balance, which are essential to maintain homeostatic equilibrium and to optimize energy and excretion versus elimination. Now, what are the most important things reverse anaerobic or hypoxic disorder, make it more aerobic, more oxygen, but requisite amount. Second is promote hydration and avoid dehydration under any circumstances, and supplementation of electrolytes is justified for optimal biochemical and physiological function. Electrolyte conducting media is generated for appropriate biochemical and physiological function upon dissolution of an electrolyte formulation.
Different categories of nutraceuticals and how they're exploding in the marketplace, and the need for protecting your scientific research, your clinical, your investment, legal investment, scientific investment, marketing investment has never been more crucial as the community of nutraceuticals and functional foods becomes much busier. You have to stand out, and that's one way you do it. So with functional foods, the ingredients give the food health promoting properties above its usual nutritional value. And nutraceuticals, as fortified food or dietary supplements, they help to provide health or medical benefits in addition to its basic nutritional value. However, nutraceuticals, as you'll see in a minute, can't make medical or disease claims. So you have to be, you can't say it'll prevent a heart attack, but you can say it'll promote cardiac health or cardiovascular health. The functional foods naturally contain bioactive compounds found in foods. Nutraceuticals.
If you can do that, then you can impact gut metabolism. And if you do 1 and 2, you can actually reduce chronic inflammation. So this was what the researchers were trying to achieve. So promoting gut health. We know that many patients tend to focus on macronutrients, but to have a positive impact on the microbiome and immune system, you must connect micronutrients and fiber because they improve systemic actions as well. So it's not just macronutrients, but it is also micronutrients and fiber. And I think a lot of the fad diets that are out there today tend to direct people to focus on the macronutrients and not the micronutrients to their detriment, and they don't know that it's to their detriment. But we're also seeing tremendous research in diagnostics and in precision medicine that really can focus on microbiome diagnostics, and that will include both macronutrients and micronutrients, including fiber. So if you take a look at why are the micronutrients and fiber so important for systemic actions? Well, we know that micronutrients modulate enzyme activity, and they're critical to nutrient utilization as well as metabolism. They provide transcription factors and have antioxidant properties.
Cell line, that is Polo 320, which is a metastatic cell line. And we also found that these are the pictures with Lycopodium clavatum, and these are the pictures with quercetin alone, where we found that after 7 days of treatment of this Lycopodium, the colony size greatly reduced. So the colony forming ability was reduced. And in the cytotoxicity, also we found the combinational treatment was really very good in coming down the cell viability percentage of the cancer cells as compared to the DMSO controls. We also checked the gene expression studies of the same cancer pathway finder and also the caspase cascade finder. We found that the BAX expression P53 expression, BCL2 expression, and caspase-3 was down with the combinational treatment. Here we found that the combinational treatment with both the plant extracts, especially Lycopodium, worked really wonder, and it can bring down Polo 320 cell, bring down the expression. We also found the caspase catalase pathway, cyclin D1, which is a proliferating marker, which shows that cells are proliferating or not, which abruptly came down, as well as the Wnt genes also came down with this combinational treatment, which showed the proliferation was really hindered in the when we treated with
In this new definition, you can see that we change a little bit at the end, saying that to promote optimal health and reduce the risk of chronic viral diseases and manage the symptom. So at the end, mostly we change here, reduce the risk, instead saying prevention or a treatment. So in this slide, simply we're saying what is the main definition, main differences. And here is again, instead prevention, management, or treatment, we put promotion of optimal health, risk reduction, and management of symptoms.
And then food approach. So you must know that the DASH diet, stop hypertension diet, which is a very, very promising diet, which is rich in vegetable, fruits, and low-fat dairy products. And this works for the people with hypertension and without hypertension both. And reducing salt from food, that's also very, very effective. And then today I'd like to introduce one product, Foshu product. On the left side there's a logo, which is the Japanese logo, which is a sign this product is approved by the government. And a Foshu product is actually established by Japanese government in 1991. And then its actually market is $6.2 billion in 2007. And then at this 2019, January 29th, 1,063 products are approved.
About 20% of the products made health claims linked to serum triglyceride reduction, and another 20% made health claims relating to high blood pressure, high LDL cholesterol, high blood glucose, tooth decay, and mineral uptake. Then after 2007, the market for Foshu products was almost saturated, probably because Foshu approval was not directly linked to product sales. To overcome the shrinking market for functional foods, a novel functional regulatory system was established in 2015. As I mentioned, this was based on the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act system already established in the USA. The DSHEA was introduced as a regulatory system for supplements with health benefits in the USA.
A summary slide of the results from all the trials. So in this meta-analysis, they adjusted the dosage of Fibrosol 2 across all these trials to 6 grams. And on the very left column, we can see the type of food that Fibrosol 2 or RMD was added to. And then the next column shows the number of randomized control trials that were run for each of these foods and the number of participants in each of these studies. And the fourth column shows the percent of the control glycemic response. So we can see that across all of these trials, there is a negative control of the glycemic response. So coming back to here, the scientists found that there is a combined mean attenuation of the glycemic response by 18%, meaning that in subjects, blood glucose levels did not spike as much after a carbohydrate meal if they also ate fibrosol 2 with it. And this attenuation was stronger in drinks than in solid food. So therefore, 3 to 10 grams of fibrosol 2 per meal has an attenuating effect on the glycemic response to carbohydrate foods and is most effective added to drinks.
Studies are in the early stages, but I will be sharing 2 micronutrients that have already been clearly linked to COVID-19. So the first micronutrient is vitamin D. It's a really diverse vitamin because it's actually a complex made up of several parts. So there's vitamin B1, B2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12, and they're all different and important. But for the sake of time, I'll be highlighting 2 of them. So B3 is called niacin, and it helps the functioning of the nervous system and the immune function as well. So B3 is involved in maintaining triglyceride and cholesterol levels by reducing free fatty acids to produce lipoproteins in the liver. And this has a connection to COVID-19 because studies so far have shown that obesity is the most common comorbidity associated with coronavirus hospitalizations. And obesity is also the strongest predictor of the disease severity. So it's kind of an indirect connection, but intake of B3 affects the biggest predictor of COVID-19 severity. So we can see how it can be beneficial in preventing serious effects of the disease.
And chamomile all have reliable binding affinities of less than -7 kilocalories per mole and can be considered as strong protease binders, including loop and domain binders. The molecular docking of quercetin specifically is shown on the right. Next, we have sage, which is a popular Kurdish ethnomedicine with various pharmacological properties. A culinary recipe of sage was its tea, or a tablespoon of it blended with heated water. Sage has also been used in the form of steam inhalation to treat respiratory disorders like ARDS caused by COVID-19. The compounds found within sage are oleanoic acid, which is a compound found in olive palm mace oil that has immunomodulatory and anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Of the sage compounds, this has the best binding affinity with the C3L protease and hydrogen bonds in domain 3. However, it has unacceptable drug likeness because it has unsuitable volume distribution.
Now we can discuss the functional food approaches that can target the gut microbiome and Parkinson's disease. So these can include probiotics in like supplemental form. They also occur naturally in foods, fermented foods like sauerkraut, kombucha, and kimchi. And then prebiotics, which occur in a lot of fruits and vegetables like leeks, berries, and citrus fruits. So the first study we'll talk about was a study to test the effects of probiotics on the motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So this was a 2019 human clinical trial. The highlighted results here were the statistically significant results that the study showed. So one is that it improved something known as the Movement Disorders Society Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale. This is basically a scale to measure how severe the motor symptoms are. So participants who took the probiotics had statistically improved results on their overall motor symptoms. There's also an increase in glutathione, which is an antioxidant that is generally lower in people with PD. It also lowered high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is higher in people with Parkinson's disease. And it lowered malondialdehyde, which is a biomarker of oxidative stress. and it is also